And thanks, Ankurji, for the introduction and for giving a short account about the book Saffron Swords. And I would like to thank Center for Indic Studies in this university for inviting me to deliver a talk based on my book, Saffron Swords. So when we speak about the history of India, what is there in the textbooks, in our academic textbooks? Are the information contained in this textbooks complete? So in my perspective, like there should have been 6 points, 6 major themes that should have been included in our academic history textbooks. Number 1, chronicling about the warriors of the soil. Number 2, chronicling about the invaders, because these invaders came and they looted, plundered, and ruled parts of the country over a period of, say, 1,000 years. But before that, they started invading from the 8th century. And their account should also be there. I'm not denying that our history should only be about our warriors or about our ancient history and heritage. They are also part of our history. But the main thing is that all other factors are ignored in our history books only, and only the invaders are glorified. And number 3, the atrocities that the looters, plunderers have committed on the general population of India over a period of 1400 years. The genocide they committed, the destruction of thousands and lakhs of temples, the destruction of the murtis, and they took thousands and lakhs of our women as captives, as sex slaves. So these atrocities should have been equally highlighted in our history textbooks. And then our history textbooks should also focus equally on the inscriptions and epigraphs, because inscriptions and epigraphs tell us a lot about not only the chronology, but also about the historical narratives related to the rulers who ruled parts of India during the last several centuries. There should have been an account of forts and fortresses and ancient and medieval era temples spread across the country. But there is nothing related to this in our history textbooks. Yes, there is information about monuments, historical monuments, and that is only related to Mughal monuments. And again, when we speak about the history of India, another point that should have been included, the contributions made by our ancient scientists in the field of science, astrology, astronomy, physics, medicine, Ayurveda, etc. So all of these factors should have been included in our history textbooks, academic history textbooks. But out of all these themes, out of all these points, only 2 points have been included. Only 1 point, sorry, not 2 points, only 1 point has been included. That is about the invaders, an account about the invaders. So 90% of what is there in our academic history books is all about invaders, their glory and what they did. For example, even Akbar has been deemed as great. Aurangzeb has been deemed as great. And recently, all of us know there has been an uproar in Twitter and other social media platforms about how an RTI query that asked about whether the Mughals built temples that they destroyed. Because in the textbook, in NCERT textbooks, there is a section praising the Mughals for building the temples that they had destroyed. So when then when this RTI was filed, when RTI query was filed, the NCERT replied that they don't have any sources to prove this point. So without any evidences, they have just written. So this the history that we have read, we have been reading in our academic books have been distorted, and it is only a one-sided narrative. It is only a distorted narrative. So much have been left out. So, and this happens only in India. When you compare the historical accounts, the academic historical account of India with other countries, comparatively, it is only in India that the glorifies, that the invaders are profusely glorified. So when we speak about civilizations, the ancient civilizations, our civilization is the oldest surviving civilization in the world, dating back to many thousands of years. There have been many ancient civilizations, but due to invasion, these civilizations perished within a matter of few years or few decades. But in India, there have been attacks, loots, plunder, genocide, destruction of our cultural centers, heritage sites for over a period of 1400 years. Yet we as a civilization have survived. How did we survive? Now, the number one reason is the resistance offered by our warrior ancestors from each and every corner of Bharat over a period of 1400 years. So the freedom we enjoy today is at the cost of the resistance offered by lakhs of our dharmic warriors, the sacrifices they made. And today we are carrying forward the legacy of our thousands of years old civilizational identity only because our ancestors saved our great grandparents. They saved dharma, they saved the motherland. And that's the reason why we are here today and we are interacting. So it is our duty as the descendants of our heroic ancestors to offer a tribute, to offer our gratitude, to remember them. But unfortunately, this is not happening because we have not been told the truth in our academic history textbooks. Because whatever history we know, 90% of the population, whatever history they know is through academic textbooks. And our textbooks have lied to us. Our textbooks, our academic textbooks have kept us away from truth. So how do we draw inspiration from our warrior ancestors? How do we take pride that, yes, we are the oldest living, surviving civilization, and we have survived only because of the resistance offered by our warrior ancestors. But today we can change this perspective. We can let each and every Bharatian know the true history of our warrior ancestors. And this can happen through dissemination of knowledge, through talks like this as being conducted by a Center for Indic in spreading these historical narratives, the right historical narratives, and also through books. So this is Saffron Swords is one of my endeavors in spreading the right historical narrative to the people across the country, in fact, across the world, because even the world should know how brave our ancestors were, how they defended the motherland over a period of 1400 years. So, and Saffron Swords has a bibliography section. This book is based on many references. It is based on not only on literary references, but also inscriptional evidences and oral historical folklore, and also based on visits to several historical sites across the country. So the co-author of this book is Yogaditya Singh Rawal, my husband, and we, both of us together, have been traveling across the country in the last 13 years to accumulate facts, to collect facts pertaining to our rich past. So I would like to narrate a few stories from the book Saffron Swords, and also one or two stories beyond this book. The first thing I would like to tell is hope. I'm delivering my talk only in English because someone mentioned that he would be attending from outside India and he would be comfortable to listen in English, but in between I will speak in Hindi as well. तो ऐसे हमें कहा जाता है, हमारी किताबों में ऐसे लिखा गया है, हमें बताया जाता है कि जो हिंदू रूलर्स जो थे वो यूनाइटेड नहीं थे, इसीलिए इन्वेडर्स आके उनको इजीली दे defeated the Hindu rulers and the ruled, they plundered the kingdoms. लेकिन ऐसे बात नहीं है, ऐसे अनेकों एग्जाम्पल्स है. Over a period of several centuries, many rulers unitedly fought against the invaders. जो earliest जो examples है, one of few of the earliest examples जो है वो सुबुक्तुजिन जो है महमूद ऑफ सुल्तान महमूद ऑफ गजनी के बारे में हम लोगों ने सब सुना है. महमूद ऑफ गजनी के पिता कृष्ण राजन इंग्लिश प्लीज.
Yeah, I think it's better if you speak in English, ma'am.
So we have been told in our history textbooks, we have been told in mainstream media and other sources also that the Hindu rulers were not at all united, and that was the reason why the plunderers, the invaders could come and invade India, parts of India. Yes, it is a fact that there were few traitors because of whom the safety of the motherland was at stake. Even today we have traitors in our country. And there are many hundreds of examples on how our warrior ancestors from across the country fought unitedly against the invaders. To draw an example from one of the earliest incidents, I'd like to narrate the story of Jaipal and Anandpal of the Hindu Shahi dynasty, who initially they ruled parts of Afghanistan, Pakistan, but later at the time when Subuktuddin attacked the Hindu Shahi rulers, their territories were limited only to parts of Pakistan. And when Subuktuddin attacked the Hindu Shahi ruler Jaipal, Hindu rulers from various parts of the northern area offered their military aid. And not only military aid, when the women learned that soldiers from several kingdoms are advancing towards Lahore to help Raja Jaipal, those women, they gave their gold ornaments so that the amount collected through the gold ornaments could be utilized for the maintenance of the huge army. And unfortunately, Jaipal lost the battle, and even his son Anandpal encountered a battle against Mahmud of Ghazni, when he was also helped by several Hindu rulers. And Raja Sangrama Raja of Kashmir, he helped one of the descendants of Anandpal to fight against Anandpal's son Trilochan Pala against Mahmud of Ghazni. And the combined army of the Raja of Kashmir and the Hindu Shahi ruler of Lahore, the combined army defeated Mahmud of Ghazni once. And then there is a chapter on Nagbhat I. Was a Gurjar Pratihar ruler. During the 8th century, the Arabs raided India several times, and few times they were victorious. At last, what the Indian rulers did, under the leadership of Raja Nagbhat I, the Gurjar Pratihar ruler, several rulers from the northern part and the southern part of the country united and the battle was fought in the borders of Rajasthan and Gujarat. And the Arabs were badly defeated in this battle. And after this failed defeat, after this failed expedition, the Arabs did not think ever of attacking India for the next 200 to 300 years. Otherwise, Islamic rule that started in the 10th or 11th century would have started right from the 8th century itself. It is because of the unity of Hindu rulers who collaboratively fought against the Arabs and defeated them. In one of the historical accounts about this defeat of the Arabs, it has been described that the Arabian forces were scattered like hay in the battlefield. They were so badly defeated. They were so severely defeated. And there is another story of unity amongst Hindu rulers during the 8th century, which I shall be describing in volume 2 of Saffron Swords. This story is not there in part 1. Raja Pulakashin of Gujarat, he is of Chalukyan descent. He was of Chalukyan descent. He, along with Rashtrakuta Prince Dantidurga, together they defeated the Arabs in the 8th century, around 738 or 39 CE. So initially, there was no information about this defeat of the Arabs in the hands of Pulakashin and Dantidurga. It was only after an inscription found in Navsari in Gujarat by a farmer that this information could be derived. Otherwise, till today, if that inscription would not have been discovered, then till today we would not have known about the defeat of the Arabs at the hands of Pulakashin and Dantidurga. So there will be there are two separate chapters on Dantidurga, Rashtrakuta Prince Dantidurga, and Pulakashin, the ruler of Gujarat, in volume 2 of Saffron Swords. So, I should not have told about their story, but just to describe about how, just to show examples of unity amongst the Hindu rulers against the invaders, that I have narrated this story. So these are only few examples that I have given about the unity of Hindu soldiers, Hindu rulers against the common enemy. Even there is a chapter on Raja Prithu in Saffron Swords, part 1. So Raja Prithu was supported. He received military support from several vassal rulers and independent kingdoms in and around Kamrupa. Let me narrate the story of Raja Prithu as well. Many of us, in fact, 99% of Bharatiyas do not know who Raja Prithu is. But yes, we all know who Bakhtiyar Khilji is. Bakhtiyar Khilji was the one who destroyed 4 of our ancient universities, including Nalanda University, Bikramshila University. And he also destroyed other heritage sites. He took many women as captives. He committed genocide of the Hindus and Buddhists. And by the time he reached Kamrupa, today Kamrupa is known as Assam. So by the time he reached Assam, by that time he had already conquered Bihar, Bengal, and Oudh. So he was so powerful at the time. And he went to Kamrupa with a huge force. And I think I narrated about Prithu in my last session, how Nalanda University had 3 multi-story libraries. And students from across the world came in and studied there. And many subjects were taught, right from the Vedas to the Mahayana Buddhism, philosophy, astronomy, astrology, medicine, Ayurveda, etc. During the time when Bakhtiyar Khilji attacked Nalanda University, there were around 2,000 teachers and 10,000 students. He Bakhtiyar Khilji executed all of the students and the teachers, and only few could escape alive. And the 3 multi-story libraries, which also included a 9-story building, accommodated lakhs of manuscripts. Khilji not only destroyed the university, not only slaughtered the students and the teachers, but he also set fire to all the multi-story libraries. So when the site was excavated, when the Nalanda University site was excavated, the excavators found heaps of layers of ash of the burnt manuscripts. So this particular plunderer, that is Khilji, when he attacked Kamrupa, today known as Assam, the ruler at that time, dynasty, and Raja Prithu was helped by several vassal rulers and independent chiefs of nearby kingdoms. So together they defeated Bakhtiyar Khilji in battle. Khilji was so severely defeated that he fled from the battlefield with a few soldiers. He reached Kamrupa using the bridge on the Barnadi River that connects the Bengal border with Assam. So when Khilji fled from the battlefield along with a few of his soldiers, he reached the Barnadi River, but he could not see the bridge. So he ordered his soldiers to build boats and rafts. At the time, he saw a temple, a very beautiful temple on the banks of the Barnadi River, a little far away from the Barnadi River. And according to an account by Minhaj Siraj, a Persian historian, in his book Tabakat-i-Nasiri, he was a contemporary of Bakhtiyar Khilji. He has written a very detailed account about Khilji in his book Tabakat-i-Nasiri. So according to Minhaj Siraj, the temple had several murtis built in gold and silver, and there was also a huge murti made of gold, and that also gives us an insight into the economic condition of Assam during the early 13th century. In fact, most ancient and early medieval era temples across the country had murtis of gold and silver. Even the Somnath temple had murtis of gold, made of gold and silver. And there are historical accounts by Muslim chroniclers on the same. So that also we have read in our history textbooks that India was known as the golden birds, सोने की चिड़िया कहा जाता था उस दौरान. So the description that Minhaj Siraj gave in his book Tabakat-i-Nasiri about that beautiful temple of Assam gives us an insight about the flourishing condition of Assam during that time. So when Raja Prithu heard about Bakhtiyar Khilji getting stuck up in that on the banks of the Barnadi River, he came with his forces. By that time, Khilji had taken refuge. He had taken shelter in the temple to save himself from Prithu. But Prithu and his forces surrounded the temple, and ultimately Bakhtiyar Khilji had to flee from there. And the boats were then not yet constructed, and he, along with his soldiers, had to cross the flooded Barnadi River. So hundreds of soldiers perished in the waters. Bakhtiyar Khilji, who was also badly wounded, he could somehow save his life, and he crossed the river along with counted few soldiers. And Khilji reached Bengal. After this failed Assam expedition, Bakhtiyar Khilji, who was one of the most powerful of the plunderers, the invaders, he remained bedridden for several months until he was assassinated by his own men. So Raja Prithu defeated this looter and plunderer and destroyer of our knowledge heritage sites. And this story is of great importance to us. But Raja Prithu doesn't find mention in our history textbooks. And I'd like to narrate another story from the south about a warrior, Kuili. So many of us have Tamil Nadu have not heard her name. She was the commander of the Udayal Padai women wing of Rani Velu Nachiyar's army. Rani Velu Nachiyar happens to be the first woman in the history of India to defeat the British in a battle. She was the queen of Sivagangai. The Rani's husband, the king of Sivagangai, was defeated in battle and was killed by the British. The British during that battle took the support of the Nawab of Arcot. So the combined army that defeated the ruler of Sivagangai. The Raja attained to Virgati in the battlefield. So when the Rani Velu Nachiyar heard about the Raja's demise in the battlefield, she, along with her young daughter, fled from the palace to a neighboring kingdom, caught by the British and put behind bars. And she fled only to gather forces and fight and regain her kingdom. So she took the help of many neighboring kings, and she gathered a huge force, and it took her 8 years to gather her forces. And she had a women wing as well, with many women soldiers, and the commander of the women wing was Kuili. So why did Velu Nachiyar name the women wing as Udayal Padai? So when Rani Velu Nachiyar fled from Sivagangai to one of the neighboring kingdoms, the British soldiers, they pursued her on horses. While fleeing from her kingdom, Rani Velu Nachiyar happened to cross a forest. She felt very thirsty in between. She came across a hut in the forest where she saw a girl. She asked the girl for water. The girl's name was Udayal. So the girl gave her water, and she asked why she was in such a hurry. Then the queen narrated in short why she was fleeing from there, why she was in a hurry. Later, the British, seeing the hoops, followed her to that particular spot. By that time, Velu Nachiyar had already left. So they asked Udayal if she had seen the queen of that kingdom, Velu Nachiyar, move in her horse by that way. But Udayal refused to tell anything about Velu Nachiyar to the British. She knew which direction Velu Nachiyar went. But the British pressurized her And they also threatened her that if she would not tell them which direction Velunachir went, then they would cut off her hands. Yet she did not reply. The British then cut one of her hands and asked again which way she went. But again, Udayal refused to reply. Then they cut her the other hand, and then they executed her when they did not get any response from her. So later, when Velunachir heard about this incident, she felt very sad, and in her memory, she named one contingent of her army, the women contingent of her army, as the Udayal wing. So Rani Velunachir, along with a huge force, they came towards Sivagangai to regain the kingdom. So initially, before before the army of Velunachir reached Sivagangai, they encountered 3 battles. In one of the battles, Velunachir defeated the British general who defeated her husband and who killed her husband. And when that defeated general, she defeated the British army, and when the general begged for pardon, Velunachir pardoned him. So Indian rulers have been following the rules of dharma in warfare since time immemorial. So even when the enemy, a defeated enemy, when asks for pardon, when the defeated enemy asked for pardon, the victorious king gave in to the request and pardoned. For example, Muhammad Ghori, he was defeated by Prithviraj Chauhan several times, but the last time when Prithviraj Chauhan, in the last battle, Prithviraj Chauhan was defeated. But during the earlier battles, whenever he was defeated, he sought pardon from Chauhan, and every time Chauhan pardoned Ghori. And that was a mistake that the kings made during the Islamic invasions and during the British colonial rule attacks. So Rani Velunachir pardoned the British general, and then they marched towards Sivagangai. So one of her spies informed her that the British had arms and ammunition, enough of arms and ammunition stored in the Raja Rajeshwari temple, because during those times the British used temples as storehouses for their weapons, for the arms and ammunitions. And when Rani Velunachir heard about this, she stopped the march and camped a few kilometers away from Sivagangai, because she knew that if she would march towards Sivagangai and confront the British, she would be easily defeated, because she lacked the artillery and the ammunition that the British possessed during that time. So she was all planning and thinking of a strategy. So the Kuili, the commander, was strolling outside her camp when she saw a group of devotees barefooted walking towards the direction of Sivagangai. Kuili stopped them and asked them where they were going. So during those times, the British, in those temples which they used as storehouses, they did not allow devotees to enter. So in the Raja Rajeshwari temple, only on the Vijaya Dashami day, only women devotees were allowed to enter and offer their puja, burn incense, and light the diya. Next day was a Vijayadashami day. Kuili immediately got her answer. An idea clicked her mind. So immediately what she did, few of our women soldiers got ready. They dressed themselves as devotees in saris, but they had their swords and other weapons hidden beneath their saris. And they walked barefooted towards the Raja Rajeshwari temple. The British allowed them entry. So later, they smelled something fishy because many of the devotees left, but the disguise Rani Velu Nachiyar, they did not leave the temple. So the British opened fire. By the time Kuili, who was wounded with 2 gunshots, she rushed towards the place where there was a pot of ghee. She immediately poured the ghee over her body, and taking the diya, she again rushed towards the ammunition store. The British got what she would do, so they rushed out of that place. And what did Kuili do? She reached the ammunition store, and there she lit herself. And the ammunition storehouse exploded. She perished into ashes. And after that, a fierce battle took place between the British and Velu Nachiyar's army. And Velu Nachiyar won this battle. And she's the first woman in the history of India to win a battle against the British. Sacrifice made by Kuili for the motherland. So this story is also there in Saffron Swords Part 1. So there is one story from Orissa about Raja Narasimha Deva. He defeated the Bengal Sultanate thrice in 3 battles. And he followed one strategy that kings during those times hardly followed. He intruded into the Bengal Sultanate territories, defeated into his kingdom. So during his reign, the Bengal Sultanate forces did not dare to encounter him in battle. There is also one story about Rani Naiki Devi from Gujarat. She did, and Muhammad Ghori, before attacking Prithviraj Chauhan, attacked Gujarat. Several years before attacking Chauhan, he attacked Naiki Devi. Because Mula Raja too was a minor at that time, and he knew that the kingdom was ruled by a woman. She was the queen regent of Gujarat. But he never knew that the queen would be so valorous in battle. And there is this story of Kapaya Nayaka from the south, who re-established Hindu supremacy in Warangal after eliminating the Turks, after defeating the Turks in that region. He also provided military support to several Nayakas in the neighboring regions and helped them regain their territories. Nayakas were military governors who were entrusted a particular area against payment of a tribute, and they were vassal rulers under a particular Maharaja. For example, the Vijayanagara kings had several Nayakas who ruled parts of the Vijayanagara Empire as feudatories. Even this Kakatiya kingdom, the Kakatiya rulers also had Nayakas. During the Kakatiya period, there were 75 Nayakas. And there are around 3 inscriptions that tell us about the victory of Kapaya Nayaka against the Muslim Turkish forces. And one of these inscriptions tells about the 75 Nayakas under the Kakatiyas, who later became independent rulers. And these Nayakas, they provided military aid to Kapaya Nayaka. And there is this story of, I'd like to tell another story about Mula Gavaru from Assam. Why? Because she was an ordinary woman. In Assam, during the early medieval period, whenever there was an invasion by the Islamic invaders, all of the people were bound to fight against the enemy forces. So it was a general rule that if the number of soldiers already fighting were exhausted, or if they attained martyrdom, then the common people, whether they were peasants or whether they were involved in other tasks, they should join the battle as soldiers. And Mula Gavaru was the wife of Ahom commander Prasengmung Barguhai against the Bengal Sultanate forces. The Ahom forces, they lost the battle in the initial stage because the Ahom commander Prasengmung Barguhai attained Virgati in the battlefield. This demoralized the Assamese soldiers. And when Mula Gavaru, the wife of the martyred commander, heard about the news, she immediately, with a flashing sword in hand and riding on a horse, rushed towards the battlefield. So the Assamese soldiers were already demotivated, demoralized, and many of them were already left the battlefield. They were energized again, seeing a lady who never participated in battle before rush into the enemy line and slaughter the enemy like goddess Shakti. So the Assamese soldiers who fled from the battle, they came back and the fighting again took place. The battle took place again. In this battle, Mula Gavaru attained Birgati, but before that, she killed 2 lieutenants of the Bengal Sultanate forces and killed scores of the Muslim soldiers. And later, the Ahom forces won this battle. So even an ordinary woman, she undertook the role of a Kshatriya to defend the motherland. And there is this perception, like there in professions, even Indica written by Megasthenes, who visited several parts of India several centuries ago. He had written in his book Indica about the various, about 7 types of profession, which he classified as caste. And the rulers or those who protected the kingdom were considered as Kshatriyas. So our ancient also tell us about the same, about this Varna system. In today's narrative, we have deviated away from what is there in our ancient texts and what has been followed in the past. For example, there is the Dalit narrative. Actually, the term Dalit should not be used because all were equal. There were tribal leaders, there were during the ancient and medieval period, and even men and women, many freedom fighters were from this particular community who are considered as Dalit by our own people. So there is a story about Ura Devi. Ura Devi, she was from Uttar Pradesh, and during one of the battles against the British, she was dressed like a male. She was very young and she was dressed like a male, and her husband was also there fighting against the British in Kanpur. And to most of the freedom fighters, they attained martyrdom. During this time, an idea struck Ura Devi. She climbed up a tree where at the bottom, underneath the tree, there was a pot. There were pots, mud pots where water was kept, drinking water was kept. So she, without being noticed by anyone, she quickly climbed up the tree, armed with her gun. And as the British came under the tree to drink or just to move to the other side, she shot a British one after the another. And around 32, one of the captains of the British smelled something fishy. He asked a soldier to look up in the tree. That had been shooting from the tree, and the soldier noticed a male person because she was dressed in a male, and they mistook her to be a man, and the soldier shot Ura Devi down and she fell dead. But before she attained martyrdom, she killed 32 of the British soldiers. So even Ura Devi doesn't find mention in our history textbooks. But Ura Devi, through this act of defending the motherland, undertook the role of a Kshatriya. So in today's times, we even political, whether there are political parties or even the common men from several communities, they divide the freedom fighters in terms of caste, in terms of like the very many of these freedom fighters are considered, or even the dharmic warriors are considered as Dalits, which should stop. Actually, they were all Kshatriyas who defended the motherland. So,
you are not.
So there are 52 episodes of Valor. Almost half of the episodes are on women warriors, right from the 8th century till 947. And volume 2, the manuscript of volume 2 is going to be completed very soon, and it will be submitted. There are 52 more episodes of Valor in volume 2, and there will be many more volumes coming up.
There's one question from Kaushik. He's saying you had mentioned about the term Dalit. Could you please let us know the origin of this word and since when it has been in use?
Actually, it is a long history. It all started with the British, and it will take a lot of time here. But in short, it all started with the British creating a census report and including various castes and communities. And besides categorizing certain sections of the people as low castes or lower categories, they also tagged a few communities as criminals. For example, the Gurjar community has been tagged as criminals by the British in their records, because the Gurjars, they never surrendered to the British. They always attacked Since the time the British established their colonial rule in India, the Gurjars, they continued their resistance and they killed the Britishers every now and then. They looted their treasury, they killed the British people, and this way they were always under threat. The British were always under threat from the Gurjars, and that's the reason why they were tagged and categorized as criminals. So likewise, even the several sections of the people have been categorized as lower castes, and the divisions they created further got divided, and that is plaguing the country today. The Britishers have left, but deep imprint in our minds, and we are fighting amongst ourselves on the basis of castes, on the basis of Dalits, on the basis of who is superior and who is inferior.
I was just wondering, like, what was the main or one of the critical reasons? Like, we were able to defend for around 200 years. From your talk, that's what it's told. What is the reason that we started losing? Is it a difference in the weapons? Like, did we have inferior weapons, or is it just fate, or like, is there any particular reason that
most of the invaders, they that the Hindu rulers always followed the rules of dharma in warfare. They never attacked during the night, and whenever the invaders asked for pardon, they were pardoned, and the invaders never followed. The invaders followed exactly the opposite of these rules of dharma followed by the Hindu rulers. For example, the Hindu rulers, they never destroyed crop fields, they never had destroyed heritage structures, they never took women as captives, they never took women as sex slaves, they never committed genocide of the common population. Only their battles were limited to a particular spot, and only soldiers, there was fighting between the soldiers only, and the number of people killed was only in the battlefield. The Hindu rulers did not loot or plunder the common people, but what the Islamic invaders did, they attacked the kingdoms in the night without information. They took women as captives, etc., etc. And the Indian rulers, they never thought that the Muslim rulers would act this way, that they would not follow the rules of dharma. So, and most of the battles between the Hindu rulers happened with prior information. And another thing is, the Hindu rulers, they gave very little importance to upgrading their military strength or upgrading their military infrastructure. But not all the Hindu rulers avoided this. There were many rulers who did secure their boundaries. They did station a strong naval force on the river fronts. They did station forces in the boundaries. They kept spies for any possible attacks by the invaders, and accordingly they fought. We have a story about Bhavashankari from Bengal, which is the story of Bhavashankari is included in volume 2 of Saffron Swords. So I would not discuss in detail, but she made it a compulsion for one household to give one person to the army. There should be one soldier from every household in Bhurishrestha. And she had a strong naval force, she had a strong army, and she upgraded her military weapons, etc. And so no rulers could defeat her. So likewise, this example was followed by many other rulers. That's the reason why they could offer resistance, even in the south or even in the north, and everywhere they could offer resistance. And we have won, and the native rulers, they always lost. That is also again a lie.